Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the new comedy mystery thriller, Susie Searches. And this is from director Sophie Kargman, who has previously worked on Query and a shorter film, Susie Searches. And this particular film focuses on Susie, played by Kiersey Clemons, who's a young woman who has a true crime podcast, and she's really trying to hit it big to help support her mother, who's very ill. And she winds up going to great lengths to try to resolve a case centered around the kidnapping of a classmate played by Alex Wolff, Jesse. And this is a film that I'm going to try to avoid talking barely anything about the narrative, because there's so many unexpected twists and turns to this story that it's really shocking, because on some level the story that you expect to be happening, this search, wraps up well within the first act of the movie, and you're like, what's the rest of this about? And the film challenges you by adding these unexpected layers, especially to Susie herself, and challenges the audience on how long they can support Susie in her endeavors, and also putting her into some pretty challenging and dangerous situations throughout this film. I think the shock value works in the narrative. I do also think that sometimes it goes a little too far, sometimes it's a little too unbelievable, and sometimes there's a bit of convenience to try to make everything come together in this film. But it's the shocks that really work. It's those elements that keep you as an audience member on your toes as you sit and watch this film. I think Clemons, who is a very talented actor, gives a strong performance here as Susie, developing layers of emotions and bringing an interesting amount of empathy to this character that narratively we get challenged to see how much we actually feel bad for her throughout all of this, through all these shocking twists and turns. Alex Wolff has a few moments to shine, and even up to some of the final moments of this film, there's some really interesting choices that he makes in terms of expressing his emotions. Jim Gaffigan is the sheriff in this town, and Susie is like an intern at the police station, and I think Gaffigan does a really fine job in this supporting role. He gets a bit of laughs. Ken Marino, though, as Kiersey Clemons, Susie's boss at this one eatery, I've never seen him in a role like this, and he is creepy and unnerving, and honestly I think he's one of the standouts of the film, because he's such a creepy, unnerving character. And you have other solid performances from the likes of Rachel Sennott, who was in Shiva Baby and in Bodies, 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 and most recently The Idol. And I do think that this film has some problems tonally too, because there's some moments that get real dark real fast, and sometimes you can't tell how much are they going to push the boundaries on a dark comedy here. And especially as the third act rolls around, it gets dark. And in general, I think this is an interesting and engaging film that has some good personality. I do think that Kargman finds some interesting ways to shake things up in terms of Susie using voiceover and her podcast for framing and narrative beats. So shaking things up a bit, keeping you on your toes with this twisted kind of plot, and some strong performances help you get through some of the bumpy moments and the overall unfinishedness that this little film has a bit of. But in general, this is a satisfying and thrilling little ride that's worth a watch. But those are my thoughts on Susie Searches. Let me know what you think, and let's talk some movies. But thank you as always for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.